What's up, guys? It's Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be breaking down how wide receivers can dominate every single one-on-one opportunity they might face against a man coverage DB. So in this order, fellas, we're going to be talking about how wide receivers can beat a physical DB who lunges at them right off the line with this clip here from Richard Sherman. Then we're going to talk about how you can get a DB to move off of his platform with your feet. We're going to talk about the hand technique wide receivers need to use to combat a physical DB, and then a few other things to help you create separation at the top of the route. So I hope this video helps you guys out. Hope it teaches you a few new things. But also, fellas, if you're a wide receiver and you want to get some work in with myself and my staff of coaches, we have two more opportunities this offseason where we're traveling out to two different states. Next up, we are coming out to Salt Lake City, Utah, and then ending off the camp tour, we're going to be in Los Angeles, California. So if you guys are local to one of those cities, would like to travel out, we always appreciate our YouTube community coming out to these things. So check out that very first link in the description below. Let's get started. So this clip here is from Richard Sherman. Now, everybody, when they're faced in a one-on-one situation, whether it's at a camp, whether it's at practice, whether it's in a live game, which is what I put the most emphasis on, you're going to get DBs who like to lunge and get physical. You know, everybody sees the highlight videos of receivers getting, embarrassed, jammed 5 yards back. How do we avoid that? How do we make sure that doesn't happen to me? So let's play this thing full speed. So this is textbook of what you need to do when a guy lunges at you. And that is honestly, at the end of the day, keep a good pad level. Now, I could tell you and teach you all the million releases that we could learn, right? I could teach you a split release. I could teach you a jab inside. I could teach you a 1-2, a slide release. And all those are great to use. And all those can work very, very well. But at the end of the day, the one thing that will kill all those releases is your pad level as a wide receiver. From the time you were like 5 years old, 6 years old, you were taught in football what? The low man is going to win. Whoever's lower is going to win the rep. So when a DB lunges at you, you need to understand that he is leaving his base. DBs are taught to stay patient. And a lot of DB coaches will say this technique, even from a guy like Sherman, this is not correct because he's not staying patient. He's coming out of his base and he is off balance because a receiver who knows what he is doing, it's easy to combat this. They want DBs to stay patient and stay in this square position for as long as possible. Now, when you get a DB who lunges at you, you got to understand that. You got to understand that he is off balance in this position. So if I can stay in a low, explosive spot with my pad level, you could choose a lot of releases to do. You could maybe come off the line if he wants to lunge at you like this. You could do something we call a step back release, where you pretty much take this front foot and you just step backwards. You could do a split release like this wide receiver does here, where you split your feet. But at the end of the day, he stays in a good explosive pad level. So when this guy gets hands, it's not the end of the world and he's not completely knocked back. So many wide receivers against a physical guy or a guy who's right in their face, when it looks like they're going to get hands, they try to back up. Their pad level pops straight up in the air and they're trying to go away from him. You don't want to have that mindset. We want to be leaning forward and slightly, not so much hunched forward, but slightly leaning forward in a good explosive pad level so I have some balance. Think of it like this. Like, let's say you're standing in front of somebody and you're standing directly tall with your chest up and your eyes straight forward. If they push you as hard as they can, you're probably going to fall back. Now, imagine if you widened your feet, leaned forward a little bit, and they tried to push you the same way, the same amount of push. It'd be a little bit harder to knock you over because you're in a better pad level position. Same thing when it comes to press coverage, fellas. So make sure you could do a million different releases. There are a million things that can work, and we're going to talk about that in the next clip. But you got to maintain a good pad level to combat that physical guy. Let's play this thing again, full speed one more time. Great job by this wide receiver, not getting rerouted, understanding that with that DB's jam, he is off balance. Okay, so now, how do we get a DB to move? How can we set up a DB with my feet? We talked a lot about pad level. We talked about body language. Now, we're going to show this clip and focus on the feet. After this, we're going to show one more clip, and we're going to talk about the hand technique that is required to beat a physical or a press coverage DB who wants to get hands. What should you do with your hands? But first, we're going to focus on the feet. I like going from the ground up. So when you have a guy, and he's in press coverage, and let's say this is like head-up press. There are a lot of different kinds of press, right? You obviously have inside shade, you have head up, you have outside shade, whether maybe he's right up on the line, maybe he's a yard or two off, maybe he's 3 yards off. That is all a form of press coverage in my mind. Now, what gets a guy to move is usually when you attack his leverage, right? Now, if he's head up, obviously you can't really attack his leverage, but if he's inside shade and you had to run, like, let's say, for example, a fade route, you'd go attack him inside. If he was outside shade and you had to run like a post route, you would attack his leverage, push back up vertical and go. Now, in this case, he's running like a slant. It's against head up. So what he does is he does like a crossover move to the outside, threatening like he's going to run a fade and then slips back under. So let's play this full speed. So he comes out, hits that 1-2, and then is able to get space on this slant, and a lot of it. So how did we get this DB to completely open up the gate like this? And that comes from stepping outside of his frame. So a lot of wide receivers, what they like to do is in the days of, like the quick foot fire drills, and I think the receiver position is getting a little bit further away from these kinds of training aspects and elements, but you get the coaches who set up the 100 cones, the 8 ladders, and it's just all about quick foot speed. And granted, that stuff is not bad because sometimes it can help. Some guys, athletes, especially younger ones, need to build that footwork and build that foundation. But when it comes to getting a DB to move, if you guys take these choppy steps inside of his frame, he is not going to move. Nothing about that looks like you were trying to take an outside release and inside release. You want to think of press releases like you are driving a car on the highway. You got the far left lane, you got the middle lane, which is where we are, and then you have the right lane. To get this DB to move to that right lane, I need to step to that right lane. Now, you might be asking me like, well, why are my feet so important if a DB's eyes are watching my hips? And that's 100% true. If you guys are stepping, but you're not bringing your body with the step, it's not going to work. So let me explain. So when we hit this crossover move here, you see when he steps, that hip and his upper body are attached to the step. You want to think of it like your right hip, right shoulder is attached to your right foot. So your right foot steps, you are bringing that upper half with it because that can give you balance. So a lot of people do one of two things. They either focus too much on the head movement and don't step enough. So they do all this like weird leaning crap with their upper half. That's not going to work. Or two, what guys will do is that they'll try to step too far, but they leave their hips and their shoulders in the middle of the frame or like in that middle lane, if you will. And then that foot is way too far outside their frame and they have no explosion. So fellas, it has to be a combination of both. You have to be able to step outside of his frame to threaten him vertically. If you don't step outside his frame, he's not going to move. You got to bring the upper half because a DB is watching your hips, and that will help you sell the move. But not only that, it will give you balance on the cut because now that cut is like kind of inside of your frame, but outside of his frame. So fellas, just make sure when we're working releases, we understand that. Now in the beginning, I talked a little bit about leverage, right? So like, let's say the DB was inside leverage and you had to run a fade. When you attack his leverage, you would want to threaten him into that far left lane. So I do a fake crossover to the inside. I'd want to step outside his frame. I'd want to bring the upper half with the step because that is what can get him to move. Let's play this thing again, full speed one more time. Now, we're going to get into the hand technique that is required when you're going up against a press coverage DB. So, this clip, a little background. This is going to be a fade route, and we have what kind of a leverage DB, what leverage does this DB have, or what shade is he? He's inside shade, obviously, right? So go to release for this situation. I'm running a fade. I obviously can't just take off and run because if I just take off and run, what's this DB going to do? He's going to get hands on me and squeeze me to that sideline. You got to make sure that we threaten him to where he doesn't want you to go. That is how we get him to move. Just like in that last clip, it was head up press. When he moved that crossover, he was stepping outside his frame. He does not want to get beat deep on the fade. Now he's inside shade. This DB is inside shade to prevent the inside. So I want to threaten him where he doesn't want me to go. I want to try to step outside of his frame and threaten him to the inside. But when I get him to move off of that platform and I take this outside release, you got to make sure that we have a plan for my hands. A lot of wide receiver coaches neglect this. They just talk about the footwork, they talk about the releases, and I'm guilty of it too because I feel like the hands can be kind of a natural thing, and there's not like one thing that you need to focus on with your hands, I'd say, but it's about having a plan. So let's play this thing full speed. So this wide receiver does a great job of just using this rip technique with his inside arm, and that's able to get him an extra step on this DB. Because again, when a DB has hands on you downfield, they're more likely to win than when they don't. That's just a fact. That's why DBs get hands in the first place. They get hands to screw up timing, but it also will put them in a better position to make a play because they're right on your hip pocket. So you see, this wide receiver works this guy to the inside. Now, if I get this DB off the platform inside, I get him to kind of like sit to the inside. One thing he is not going to do is he is probably not going to reach with the left hand. He's probably not going to move and then stick his left hand out there as he's off balance. Because what could we do? We could just swat the left hand and then his hips lock out and I got him by probably a good 5 yards. He's going to probably try to stay square as long as possible. And then when we take off to the outside, he's going to try to jam with the right hand and recover, open up his hips, keep his hips loose, and try to get hands on me. So I need to make sure that I have that plan for when I shoot my hands at this guy. So when he comes off, I don't necessarily need like this right arm doesn't play a factor. I could honestly, if he wants to attack me with his right hand, I could just swat it with my left hand. You could maybe dip underneath and rip up. You could chop down like this wide receiver does. I personally like this chop down move that he does because it protects your rib cage. A lot of wide receivers, what they will do is they'll make a move and they'll like swat with the right hand and they'll swing this left one way over the top. They'll try to swim, and that will expose your rib cage. I love this type of move. Attack him inside, swat down. And when we get those hands off, that is how I can get separation there. But it's just about having a plan. You have to understand how a DB is going to play, what his hand technique might be. And a lot of it's reaction based. If I get this DB to move off the platform and he's sitting there and I really get him to sit flat footed and he shoots his left hand, that should be easy money. You could still just swat with the left. He shoots the left, I swat it down, his hips are going to lock out and I'm open. He wants to shoot, I shuffle him to the inside. He wants to replace, shoot with the right hand. I still swat down with my left. I personally love that chop move because it's easy and it can be set up with the footwork. That's honestly my favorite thing to do hand technique wise. I think it's more of a reaction. I don't think you need to do the swat and the dip. I just like the chop and let's be physical. Now, how would you use this in another situation? Like let's say this DB was maybe outside shade and you had to run like a post route. I would attack him. Let's say he's outside shade. I'd attack him. I'd threaten him outside. I'd take the inside release and he'd probably try to recover with what hand? His left hand. So I could just chop with my right hand now. But it is set up off of the feet, fellas. Let's set him up with the feet, have a plan of action with my hands, and don't expose that rib cage. Let's play this thing again, full speed one more time. Great job by this wide receiver using that chop down move, having a plan for his hands, and setting up this route with that footwork. All right. So now, one last thing I want to cover, fellas, and that is how you can get skinny on your routes to make it easier for a QB to throw you open. Now, when it's a one-on-one opportunity, from a quarterback perspective, for me, a guy who has experience in both positions, if I'm throwing you a one-on-one, I just need some kind of space because I'm just trying to give you a chance, right? That's what you tell quarterbacks all the time. Let's say they come up to the line, it looks like maybe it's zone coverage, and then the coverage changes, and it goes to like straight up man across the board, cover 0, maybe cover 1, and you got this one-on-one matchup to the outside. I am going to either my fastest receiver or my best route runner. That may be the biggest if it's like in a goal line situation, but I'm probably going to my best guy, right? And I feel confident that the people who watch these videos should be on that level. So if we're running a fade, this is going to be a fade route, any kind of outside breaking route especially, I got to give my QB space to give me a chance. So that comes from getting skinny on your routes. So let's play this thing full speed. So this wide receiver is running a fade. Now I want you to see how he gets back into the cushion of this DB as he's running this thing, right? And he's able to make this play. And he gave that QB a lot of space to throw him open. And that is what it takes, fellas. This is an easy money throw for a QB who is even remotely a little bit talented. So let's talk about it. So we got inside shade, very similar to the last clip. What he does, he doesn't do too good of a job of stepping outside of the DB's frame, right? What he could have done is maybe close the distance a little more, threaten more inside, and that would have gotten that DB to bite. Now, again, we see how we go up to the outside. He's reacting with the same hand as the last clip, by the way. Just saying. But when we go here and we attack him inside, and I don't necessarily get as much separation as I'd like, and I go to the outside, I'm taking an outside release. It is very easy for this DB to get hands and for us to just want to just keep running outside of him. But that's not enough space for the QB to throw us open. Especially if you're running a route like an out route, a comeback, a corner, and you didn't get a lot of separation with your release. If you guys just try to run away, you are cutting down the space the QB has. This wide receiver does a great job of dipping his shoulder and getting skinny into this guy. Because if he would have just kept running and he would have ended up right here with maybe about a yard or two from the sideline, that's an impossible throw for that QB, you guys. You got to understand that. That's so difficult for them. They have to be so perfect with that ball, and that doesn't happen that often. At any level, that's a very, very tough throw, especially when you got a guy right on his hip. So we have to give him space to fade me open, and that's called getting skinny. So fellas, anytime we have an outside breaking route, I got to make sure that I get skinny when I'm on my stem. I need to get skinny to give the QB space to either throw me on a comeback, throw me on a corner and out, or fade me out on a fade. Now, the other reason you'd want to get skinny is if you were running a post route, you could actually restack him. You could actually get over the top to where he's trailing your hip, give a fake, and be able to create space on the post. But we have to get skinny, fellas. Anytime I'm in a one-on-one situation with that stem, got to get skinny, got to get into the cushion of the DB and be almost hip to hip with him. Let's play this thing again, full speed one more time. Great job by this wide receiver. That's a textbook stem on that fade to give the QB space to throw us open. Great route. All right, fellas, I really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions at all, don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. I always appreciate the feedback. Always great to hear from you guys. And again, fellas, if you'd like some more information on our 2 off-season camps that we have coming up in Salt Lake City, Utah, and then Los Angeles, California, check out that very first link in the description below. We'd love to have you guys out there. I'll see you guys next time.